I think about loneliness, for me, it's not really so much loneliness that I feel often. It's more so lack of accommodation for my needs not being met. Back to the Renaissance Room podcast. So one, I just kind of want to start this podcast off by saying I really feel like it's really something said about the current state of culture and just like societies and really Western society, like American society. Yeah, we're talking about party in the USA. And it's really just because I just realized the ways in which social media has hindered us. I am someone, I think I'm like borderline millennial, borderline Gen Z. So like for me, you know what's so funny though, y'all? Like if I'm being real, because I really just said that so modestly. Honestly, I really don't feel like I fit in with Gen Z. I really don't. Like I just feel like and it's crazy because it's like I'm not really pushing it. Like I'm not really trying to be old, but your girl is growing older. And I feel like with the younger generation, it's just different. I don't really get down with things online. Like I'm so used to being in person, meeting people in person. You know, if you want to meet new people, my mindset is automatically like go outside, like go hang out. You know what I mean? But I think for other people, it's more so like, oh no, like let's just go online and we can just meet people this way. And it's like, it's a very interesting thing. And I think I'm still kind of like having to adapt and like switch my mindset to that. I would say that I've always been the type of person that spent a lot of time alone. So I really felt like when a lot of people came up with it, like self-love, spending time alone, getting to know yourself type of MO, I've already been there. I've done that. That's just who I am. You know, I feel like I'm someone who has always known who I am, in a sense of like my personality. And I think that I had very early seasons of isolation early on in my life. So for me, it was just one of those things where it's like, I didn't really need like seasons of that. And at this point, it's one of those things where it's like I'm a human being and I'm completely wired for connection, but it just seems to be one of these things that is so complicated and superficial today. It just blows my mind. I think geography kind of plays a role in that, and I think that's why I've always kind of had dreams to be elsewhere. But when I step into a space of gratitude, I try to just be like, no, you know, the Midwest, but I think that there really is something said about it. When I go out and, you know, I do some solo traveling and so forth, when I go out and I have no problem meeting people. Like, I know for me, it's not me. And so this isn't really to come on and be like rambling, but it's more so to kind of talk about some of the factors that really hinder your social interactions with people. You know, I feel like growing up in my city, I think that there's a lot of poverty. And I think that the people of color who are not impoverished are so scattered and so far, you know, out like from the city and from the rest of like us civilians that it's just one of those things where they don't really come back and seek to incorporate anything like that. I think they just kind of go on and live their lives like happily ever after, which I think is fair. You know, because I think every Black person, I do think representation matters. And I think that because Black people have been deprived of so much just historically and continually, like I just think it's one of those things where I kind of feel like it would be right to give back, but I realize that that's not everyone's purpose or desire. So, you know, there's that. But one of the things that I can say that I just kind of noticed is just like, wow, there's just really it's a huge disconnect. You know, it's a huge disconnect. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people always say like moving is a solution. And don't get me wrong, because I kind of feel like I'm sitting on here making this podcast episode knowing good and well I probably should have been left. But it's just, I don't know. It's just a very interesting thing. And I just want to know, are you guys having this? Is it just me? Am I the drama? Or are you guys having those same interactions? People talk about, you know, it's hard to make friends as you get older. I would disagree. I mean, I really do believe in that proverb where God says, like, if you want friends, show yourself friendly. I feel like I never had problems making friends outside of my city and like making friends when I go out. Like even still in my city, I make friends when I go out. And for me, friendships is just one of those things to where it's never really been hard for me to make friends. I think No, I can't say that, because I feel like the friends that I've met at a later phase in my life, through my passions, through my hobbies, through, professional opportunities and so forth like that, we're still friends. And I think that there has to be a willingness from both people on both ends to maintain the relationship, and it doesn't always have to be this OD thing. But I do think that, especially given social media and the current social climate, I do think that to an extent, like there's a lot of superficiality that's kind of tailored around relationships today. And I do think that plays a huge role in how we interact with one another. Like, I think that that's kind of why so many people are struggling in relationships, and they're struggling to maintain and sustain. I think that my whole thing with the social media reference was like, and I think I posted it on the Patreon, which I'm still figuring the whole Patreon thing out. I have so many questions. I thought it was a very simple thing, but it seems as though with all these sites, it's becoming more complex, because it's becoming more algorithmic. It's becoming more systemic in such a way. Like, it's not like a Facebook, MySpace, Instagram kind of like thing. And I think even still with Instagram, it became a little bit more intricate than just like posting and like garnering, you know what I mean? Like, there's, it's about like scheduling and timing, like, you know what I mean? I don't know if it was always like that. I do think that there had to be some point where you can garner an audience authentically by just being consistent. But I think that when it comes to social media presence and just being online, I don't think it's like that no more. Like, I think that there's been some tailoring, some tweaking to these social sites, and it's more so marketing kind of like based, you know what I mean? It's not this like thing that you just kind of like go out and do. But I pretty much just was talking about how I really felt like with TikTok being in its prime, it was the social media platform that gave Black people exposure. I think that's why we had the conversations around like soft life and luxury lifestyles, because we were exposed to how white people lived, essentially. Like, we were exposed to the beautiful homes and the trips and all these different things. And let me just say this, because I feel like I talked about this in the last podcast episode. I really do want people to know that, like, not every white person is better than you. And I don't even want to say not every white person, and I'm talking about more so from an economic standpoint. There are a lot of people who are white, who are poor, who are also trying to keep up with their neighbors, working in the credit business. I can honestly say it's just very interesting. People will literally put like $14,000 on trips, will be spending well over, to be like in Italy and so forth. And I'm all here for an experience, but I just wanted to just kind of go ahead and dispel the myth that white people are responsible. White people are financially sound and secure. Like, that's not true. Like, financial literacy permeates the minds of majority of Americans. So like, it's not one of those things where it's like, if you're Black, you're more prone to this, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to dispel that. But I think that exposure kind of put Black people in this space to strive for this life of grandiosity without really considering all of the intricacies and the operations that kind of go into play. I think that white people have been able to maintain their wealth, sustain it, build it, grow it, and all these different things is because they have community, they have alliance, right? And it's not that Black people don't get along and that Black people don't like each other and that it's not possible. Like, those are all the things that I also try to talk about, like moving beyond, because I think that those are just kind of like mental constructs that, need to be broken down, and we need a new paradigm. But there really is something said about that. And so when you have a Black business and you're doing everything by yourself, it's a really, really tough and challenging thing. On top of really trying to just maintain and sustain your survival, like, it's not easy. And I was talking about this on the Patreon, where I kind of talked about, for me, I feel like this whole idea of cutting people off as you level up, it's not really so much a matter of like people always hating on you. But I found it to be one of those things to where it just kind of seems as though as you grow, as you elevate, and it's really because you're doing the work. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing the legwork, and the legwork isn't pretty. Like, you're not going to have the money to go out with your friends all the time. You're not going to have, like certain items by a certain age, right? In terms of like materialism. And I think that that's kind of what people judge each other off of, right? Like, I always kind of talk about how Black culture used to kind of be this thing where it was centered around love and community. But now that that's dead, it's just one of those things where it's like we kind of judge each other in the same socio-political ways. And it's like, we look at each other like, okay, well, if he's not in the bins, or if she's not doing this, if she's not, and now it's become the physique for women, right? Where we talk about the plastic surgery, and for guys, it's about the status. So it's just one of those things where it's like we no longer have that like authenticity. We no longer have that love a lot of times within our communities. And that's kind of what's driving the relationships right off the deep end, man. And I can honestly say for myself, I'm greatly affected and impacted by it. But I will say I have hope, because I do consider geography, and I do consider the fact that, you know, for me, it's just one of those things where I've met people and I've had friends, and I, you know, sustain relationships with people who I've met out of state. And, you know, I've never had problems making friends when I go out on my own time to social events and social gatherings and so forth like that. Like, I'm a pretty friendly person. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys feel like is some of the things that are hindering your social interactions? Or do you feel like your social interactions are being hindered? You know, I know a lot of people aren't really struggling with this. I think for me, given a lot of factors in my life, yeah, I would definitely say it makes a difference. But I you know, I'm going to step into a space of gratitude as I close out this podcast episode, because I'm meeting a dear friend of mine. We met through our love for teaching, right? The passion for the children. Hello, shout out to youth organizers and like youth planners and youth founders of great, you know, nonprofit organizations and all those things. I mean, it really brings you a sense of fulfillment. It's like, okay, I need something to ground me in this world where everyone is going left and right. Like, this is just kind of crazy, right? So we're actually going to get coffee tomorrow. So I can't really say that, you know, it's that bad. And I think for me, it's just more so like being a social person. I noticed that one thing, I'm close with this too, because I think a little bit of this is biology. You know, your hormones as a woman. I seen this really cool video. She talked about the cycle and just how it really plays a huge role in like how you be feeling. And I feel like for me, I realized that like at a certain point, I'm like super social, and it's like I want to go out and I want to talk and I want to be around people and so forth. But I also think that, you know, working from home and, you know, that kind of being the workforce for a lot of people now, it just makes a huge difference. Like, and I'm always down to socialize. Like, I love that. I'm such a sociable person. But I guess for me too, I also have to be real with myself and factor in the truth that I'm not really like a superficial socializer. Like, I'm someone who's like, I love hearing about the interests and the hobbies of the people that are around me. I love hearing about their life, right? Their stories, the things that they've done. You know, I'm big on sharing laughter. And I think that's kind of another reason why I talked about me not really feeling like I fit in with my generation, because I feel like a lot of young people, one, for the fear of failure, and just people really kind of pretty much shying away from starting from the bottom and so forth. I find myself in a space often where I'm really gravitating towards people who are a little bit older than me, just because I feel like they have the experiences and we can exchange those experiences and we can have a good time and we can laugh and we can, you know what I mean, kind of create rapport. I feel like with a lot of young people, they don't have that. And that's why I always encourage people, you know, to be mindful with responsibilities, right? Like, don't jump off the porch with responsibilities, especially in today's time. I don't care what nobody say. And this kind of goes back to leveling up and doing things differently, right? Because you're going to be trading in all these responsibilities, right? So it's like expensive apartment, expensive car, so forth. You're trading in that for experiences, which is not oftentimes seen as something that's like equitable or of any value in the Black community, unfortunately, right? We really, really have this stronghold with materialism, which is understandable. Like, it's nothing wrong with, you know, it's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing wrong with it per se, but I think we got to kind of be mindful of that sometimes. And so my reference to that was really just talking about, like, as far as the youth, you know, so anybody who's young and listening, like, of course, you know, but I say that because you need flexibility. And if you start your life off with like a bunch of responsibilities, whether that be kids, whether that or whatever, because and let me not say that, because listen, I don't want anyone to I don't want to stray anyone away from whatever it is that's on their heart and their desires. Like, let me just pause, because let me retract what I said and let me elaborate. I'm just saying that you want to be able to create a life where you can have certain experiences, because life kind of has a way of moving really fast. I feel like looking at my birthday coming up this year, I'm like, yo, that's so crazy. I'm in this age in my life. And honestly, I had a different type of attitude about it, because I felt like for me, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I feel like I've accomplished a lot, you know, like in my own, you know what I mean? Like in my own personal esteem. like I've accomplished a lot. And I felt like it was one of those things where I was like, okay, like what do I want for this next phase of my life? Like I feel like there's definitely a lot more to go, but I just kind of got to this point where I just kind of realized for me, I'm like, okay, I'm always going. There hasn't been anything that I haven't been able to do that I set my mind to, like, and not to really be braggadocious, but more so like to be like, okay, let's rid this imposter syndrome and just kind of figure out like, let's re-strategize, and more so let's reprioritize like what really matters to us. Because to me, it was very evident that through my accomplishments, there really wasn't a lot of fulfillment, because I just felt like it was just one of those things where it's like, I'm just kind of doing this because I'm on earth and like I can, and you know what I mean? Yes, there's some meaning and there's some purpose, and like these things they have their purpose, you know what I mean? Like in aiding in my self-esteem and, doing the work that I do, like giving back and such to my community. It's a very humbling and fulfilling experience. But I'm like, I just kind of realized that it was like, okay, we got to kind of, you know what I mean? Like what really brings me joy? What really brings me a sense of excitement? What brings me a sense of like, I don't want to say entertainment per se, because I think entertainment is one of those things where it's always kind of directed specifically towards like the entertainment industry, the music industry and so forth. But it's more so like, how do I find my own pleasure in life? And I just kind of found for me that just through all these series of accomplishments, it was just one of those things where I was like, I just had a revelation. It was like, it was never ending. You're always going to be accomplishing something, like, because I'm just hardworking like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm always going to be doing something. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something that I'm going to be doing. And so it was just important for me to kind of step back and be like, okay, what is it that we want, out of this life? What's fun to us? What do we find pleasure in? And more so kind of leaning towards that. So I kind of feel like I just kind of completely took this car all the way left. I don't even remember where we were. I can't even get us back there. So we're going to kind of just park it. We're going to leave it here. Flip the thing. No, we're not going to put it in reverse. We're just going to leave it here. And I hope you guys found something insightful from this podcast episode. This was great. I feel good doing this. I can say this is definitely one of my favorite hobbies. And I call it a hobby because I don't know. I think with Renaissance Room, with Earthen's Den, and the podcast prior, don't ask me why I've had 3 podcasts. I think at this point it's just very like, you know what I mean? But I don't know. It's just one of those things to where I just kind of noticed for myself that, like I said, with those accomplishments, man, it's just never ending. It's never ending. And you just kind of look up and like, you're still working, you're working towards those things, but it's like, okay, okay, I'm rambling. I'm gonna go now. And I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. Peace.